There's a kind of love nobody claps for. No holidays built around it, no cards printed in its name, no moment where someone looks you in the eye and says, "Thank you for staying." It's the kind of love that wakes up early, goes to work, pays the bills, fixes what's broken, and then does it all again the next day without ever asking to be seen. Most people don't even notice it's there. I lived that kind of love for 15 years. And the boy I gave it to looked me dead in the face one afternoon, straightened his jacket and said, "You're not family. Don't come." Just like that. No anger, no hesitation. Just a sentence he'd clearly practiced, like he needed it to come out clean. My name is Daniel Reed. I work construction, mostly highway jobs, long hours, different cities, whatever keeps the checks coming. I've spent more mornings with a hard hat in my hand than I have sitting at a kitchen table. I don't own anything fancy. My boots are worn down, my truck's older than I'd like to admit, and most of my shirts have paint or dust somewhere on them. But for 15 years, I showed up. For a kid who never asked me to. I met his mother when he was 8. Quiet kid, the kind that watches more than he talks, the kind that already understands things kids shouldn't have to understand yet. He shook my hand the first time we met, firm, polite, and then walked back to his room without another word. I remember thinking, he's already learned not to get attached. And I made a decision right there, standing in that hallway, hearing a door close down the hall. I wasn't going to be another man who came and went. I was going to stay. So I did. I stayed through the silent dinners, the one-word answers, the car rides where the only sound was the turn signal clicking. I stayed through birthdays where I stood just a step behind, never quite in the picture. I stayed through every game, every school pickup, every late night when something broke and needed fixing. I didn't push. I didn't demand anything. I just stayed. And somewhere along the way, I thought that mattered. I thought that eventually, quietly over time, it would count for something. But standing there in that kitchen, hearing those words, "You're not family. Don't come," I realized something I should have understood a long time ago. Sometimes, showing up isn't enough. And sometimes, the silence in a house teaches louder lessons than anything you ever say. I looked past him for just a second. His mother was standing in the hallway. She had heard everything. And she didn't say a word. Not one. That was the moment something in me finally settled. Not anger, not even heartbreak, not the kind people expect, just clarity. So I nodded, didn't argue, didn't raise my voice, didn't remind him of a single thing I'd done. Instead, I did something else. That night, while they were getting ready to celebrate without me, I left something on that kitchen table, something neither of them saw coming. And by the time they found it, everything had already changed. I met Laura in a place you wouldn't expect anything important to begin. It was a Tuesday evening at a small roadside diner just outside Little Rock. The kind of place with chipped coffee mugs, flickering neon in the window, and a waitress who calls everyone, "Hun." I had just come off a 12-hour shift, hands still sore, boots dragging a little more than usual. She was sitting 2 booths over, trying to calm down a kid who clearly didn't want to be there. He wasn't loud. That's what caught my attention. Most kids his age, 8, maybe 9, throw a fit when they're tired or bored. But this one just sat there, shoulders tight, eyes fixed on the table like he was somewhere else entirely. Like he'd learned early that making noise didn't change anything. Laura looked up at me once when I passed by, gave a small, tired smile. Not the kind people use to be polite, the kind they use when they've been carrying too much for too long. A week later, I saw her again. Same diner, same booth. That's how it started. We talked in pieces at first. A few words here, a longer conversation there. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. She laughed easily, but there was something underneath it, something careful, like she measured how much of herself she gave away at any moment. On our third time sitting down together, she told me about him. "I have a son," she said, setting her cup down slowly. "His name's Ethan. He's 8. She watched my face when she said it. Not casually, carefully. "I figured," I said. "He looks like you." She didn't smile at that. "There's something you need to understand," she added. "His father? He's not around. Hasn't been for a while." I nodded once. "Okay." She held my gaze a second longer than necessary. "A lot of men hear that," she said quietly, "and they decide it's not worth the complication." I leaned back in my seat, took a sip of coffee that had already gone cold. "I'm still here," I said. That was the moment something shifted. Not big, not dramatic, just enough. I met Ethan a few days later. Laura had me come by the house. Small place, quiet street, the kind of neighborhood where people keep to themselves. He was sitting on the living room floor when I walked in, a book open in front of him. He didn't look up right away. Laura said his name softly. "Ethan, this is Daniel." He stood up, walked over, and held out his hand. Firm grip, eye contact. No smile. "Nice to meet you," he said, like a grown man. I shook his hand, nodded once. "You too." Then he let go, turned around, and went straight back to his room without another word. The door closed gently behind him. I remember standing there, hearing that soft click and thinking, he's already learned how to keep people at a distance. Kids don't do that naturally. They learn it. On the drive home that night, I didn't feel discouraged. I didn't feel rejected. If anything, I felt something settle in. Because I understood something most people miss. That kind of distance, it's not attitude. It's defense. And defenses don't show up unless something's already hit you before. I knew what I was walking into. This wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be fast. And it definitely wasn't going to come with appreciation anytime soon. But I also knew something else. Most men walk away from situations like that. They see the wall and they leave. I wasn't going to be one of them. Not this time. Not with that kid. So when Laura asked me a week later, carefully, like she expected the answer might change everything, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I didn't hesitate. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. And I meant it. The first year, I didn't try to be anything to Ethan. Not a father, not a friend, not even a mentor. I had seen men come into situations like this before, trying too hard, too fast, showing up with gifts, forced enthusiasm, big smiles that didn't quite land right, like they were auditioning for a role instead of earning it. Kids like Ethan don't respond to that. They notice effort that feels loud. So I kept mine quiet. I moved into the house slowly, like you would into a space that already had its own rhythm. I fixed things when they broke, paid my share, stayed out of the way when it mattered. Ethan watched. He didn't say much, but he noticed everything. Kids always do. Laura worked evening shifts a few nights a week, which meant I became the one picking Ethan up from school. Every Tuesday and Thursday, 5:10 p.m., same spot. I'd be parked outside, engine running, radio low. He'd walk out, backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes scanning the line of cars until he found mine. He'd open the door, get in, close it gently. "Hey," I'd say. "Hey," he'd reply. And that was it. The drive home was about 25 minutes. Most days, we didn't say another word. No music loud enough to fill the silence, no forced conversation. Just the road stretching out ahead of us, the hum of the engine, and the quiet understanding that neither of us was going to push the other past what we were ready for. I've spent most of my life working with my hands. Silence doesn't bother me. So I let it sit between us. Weeks turned into months, months into years. And something started to change. Not all at once, not in any big, obvious way, but in small moments you could miss if you weren't paying attention. One Thursday afternoon, maybe a year and a half in, Ethan got into the truck like usual, closed the door, looked out the window. Then, about 5 minutes into the drive, he said, "Coach says you don't have to wait in the parking lot." I kept my eyes on the road. "Yeah? You can just come back later." "I don't mind waiting," I said. He shrugged, still looking out the window. "You don't even watch practice." I let a second pass. "I did," I said. "First couple times." He turned his head slightly, just enough to glance at me. "You told me not to." Another pause. Then he said, quieter this time, "You can watch if you want. I don't care." That was it. No smile, no big moment, no thank you, just permission. And I'll tell you something honestly. That might have been the biggest thing he ever gave me up to that point. The next Tuesday, I stood on that sideline, cold wind cutting through my jacket, hands shoved in my pockets, watching a group of kids run drills under fading stadium lights. Ethan didn't look at me, not once, but I saw the way he played, focused, determined, like every movement mattered. And standing there, just watching him, something settled in my chest. Not pride, not exactly. Something quieter than that. Something steadier. I never said anything about it afterward, didn't bring it up in the truck, didn't ask questions. But the next Thursday, he didn't tell me to stay in the parking lot. And the Tuesday after that, he glanced at me once during practice, just for a second, then looked away. That's how it went. No big breakthroughs, no sudden bonding moments, just small shifts, brick by brick, drive by drive, silence by silence. I didn't need him to call me anything, didn't need a title or recognition. All I needed was to know I was earning my place there, slowly, honestly. And for a long time, I thought I was. If this story were simple, there would have been a clear villain. Someone loud, someone cruel, someone easy to point at and say, "That's the problem." But it wasn't like that. Not even close. For a long time, I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Something in the house, just slightly off. Not wrong enough to call out, not obvious enough to confront, but present. Like a draft you feel in a room even when all the windows are closed. Ethan was warming up to me, slowly, carefully, in his own way. But every time we took a step forward, something pulled him back. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. It happened in small moments, quiet ones, the kind most people would miss. Ethan was around 10 when I first noticed it. We were sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. He had been stuck on a math problem for 10 minutes, frustration starting to show in the way he pressed his pencil too hard against the paper. I leaned over, pointed something out. "Try breaking it down like this." He looked at it, thought for a second. Then his face shifted, just slightly, as it clicked. Oh, that small moment, that flicker of confidence. It mattered. Laura walked in right then, setting her purse down. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," Ethan said. "Daniel helped me." She smiled, but then she added, lightly, casually, like it meant nothing. "Well, don't get too used to it. He works a lot, might not always be around when you need help. It was a small thing, easy to ignore. So I did. A year later, it happened again. Ethan had made the team, first real game coming up. He didn't say much about it, but I could tell it mattered to him. I told him I'd be there, and I was. Front row of the bleachers, same spot, every game. Didn't miss one. One evening after dinner, I overheard Laura talking to him in the living room. "Daniel's a good man," she said. "He tries hard." There was a pause. "But you know how things go, right? People don't always stay forever. I just don't want you getting too attached." I stood in the hallway just out of sight, not moving, not interrupting, just listening. That was the first time something in my chest didn't sit right. Not anger, not yet, just a quiet realization. It kept happening over the years, not big conversations, not harsh words, just little sentences, dropped gently, repeated over time like seeds. When Ethan was 12, "Don't rely on anyone too much." When he was 14, "Things can change fast. You have to be ready for that." When he was 15, older now, more aware, I heard him almost say it. We were in the garage working on something small, didn't matter what. He looked at me, hesitated. "Dad?" Then stopped, like the word burned on the way out. He looked away, face tightening. "Daniel," he corrected. That moment stayed with me longer than I'd like to admit, because I knew something had shifted, and I hadn't been the one to move it. Here's the truth I came to understand, slowly, piece by piece. Laura wasn't trying to hurt me. She wasn't trying to turn Ethan against me, not intentionally. She was afraid. Afraid in the way people get after they've been left too many times. Afraid of letting her son believe in something that might disappear. Because she had lived that story before, more than once. So she did what she thought was protecting him. She kept a distance between us. Not by pulling him away completely, but by making sure he never stepped too close. And the hardest part? She did it gently, lovingly, convincing herself it was the right thing, but fear, when you hold on to it long enough, doesn't just protect you. It shapes everything around you. Ethan grew up thinking that keeping me at arm's length was the smart choice, the safe choice. And I stayed through all of it. Because by the time I understood what was happening, walking away would have proven her right. The day of Ethan's graduation started lighter than I expected. Clear sky, warm air. One of those mornings where everything feels like it's lining up the way it's supposed to. Laura was already up early, moving around the kitchen, straightening things that didn't need straightening. Nervous energy. Ethan came downstairs dressed sharper than I'd ever seen him. Suit pressed, hair done, shoulders a little tighter than usual, but there was something else there too. Pride. He had worked for this, and whether he knew it or not, I had been proud of him for a long time. The house felt full, not with people, but with anticipation. His biological father was flying in that afternoon. First time in over a year. I could feel the shift in Ethan the second he mentioned it days earlier. The way his voice changed, the way he checked his phone more often. I didn't take it personally. I understood. There are some things a kid just holds on to. I stayed busy, wiping down the counter, adjusting chairs, making sure everything was in place before we left. That's what I had always done. Stay useful, stay present, stay just outside the frame. My jacket hung by the door. Inside the pocket was something I had been carrying for months. I had planned to give it to him that night, after everything, quietly, just between us. I heard his footsteps behind me. turned around with a small smile already forming. "Hey," I said. "You look—" "Daniel," he cut me off. Not harsh, but deliberate. There was something in his tone that made me stop mid-sentence. I set the towel down slowly. "Yeah?" I said. He took a breath. Not shaky, not emotional, controlled, like he had rehearsed it. "The best thing you can do for me today," he said, adjusting his sleeve slightly, "is not come." The words didn't land all at once. They settled, slow, heavy. "I mean," he added, like he needed to make sure there was no misunderstanding, "you're not family." A pause, then, "Don't come." The kitchen went quiet in a way I can't fully explain. Not just silence, stillness, like even the air didn't want to move. I looked at him, really looked at him. Not the 8-year-old kid who shook my hand that first day, not the teenager sitting in the passenger seat staring out the window, but the man standing in front of me now, certain, resolved. And then, without waiting for an answer, he nodded once to himself, turned, and walked back upstairs. Just like that. I stood there for a second, maybe longer, hard to say, because when something hits you like that, time doesn't move the way it's supposed to. Then I felt it. Not the words, not even the rejection. Something else. I looked past the empty staircase and saw Laura standing in the hallway. She had heard everything, I could tell. The way her shoulders had gone still, the way her eyes met mine for just a second too long. That moment, that was the real impact. Because she didn't step in, didn't correct him, didn't soften it, didn't say my name. Nothing. 14 years in that house, every repair, every drive, every silent moment where I chose to stay instead of walk away. And she stood there and said nothing. Our eyes held for a second, 2, maybe 3, long enough for something unspoken to pass between us. Understanding, regret, maybe even recognition, but not action. She turned and followed him upstairs. That's when it settled, clearer than anything had ever been before. This wasn't just Ethan's decision. It never had been. I walked to the door, slow, reached into my coat pocket, felt the envelope still there, and for the first time, I didn't feel confused. I didn't feel angry. I felt certain. So I took it out, looked at it for a second, then turned and walked toward the kitchen table. I set the envelope down on the kitchen table, carefully. Not dramatic, not loud, just deliberate. Then I reached into my pocket again and placed the key on top of it. Metal against wood. A small sound, but in that quiet house, it carried. I stood there for a second looking at it. 15 years. Every early morning, every late night, every mile driven, every dollar saved, every moment I chose to stay when it would have been easier not to. All of it, sitting there in one envelope. I didn't write much, didn't need to, just the truth. Clean, simple. Nothing he could twist into guilt or obligation. No, after everything I've done, no reminders, no debt. I took one last look around the house, the chair I always sat in, the spot by the door where my boots stayed, the hallway where I first watched an 8-year-old kid walk away from me like I didn't belong there. I had spent years becoming part of that space, quietly, without asking. Then I turned and walked out. No slammed door, no final speech, just the sound of it closing behind me. I didn't leave town. Didn't need to. I drove about 20 minutes out, pulled over at a spot I'd used before when things got heavy, killed the engine, let the silence settle in around me. For the first time in a long time, there was nothing left to prove. They came back late that night, laughing. His father must have said something funny at dinner. I wasn't there. Laura told me later what happened next. They walked into the kitchen and saw the table, the light still on, the envelope, the key, and something missing that had always been there. Ethan picked it up first, opened it. Inside was a job offer. Real one. Full position at a firm I had spent the last 2 years quietly talking to, pulling favors I never asked for, making sure when the time came he had a door open, not because he asked, but because I believed he deserved it. At the bottom of the page I had written one line, "It's yours if you want it." He stepped outside, and that's when he saw the car, parked in the driveway, dark blue. Exactly the one he used to look at online when he thought nobody was paying attention. Laura opened her letter next. Hers was longer. Not angry, not accusing, just honest. I told her I understood, that I had seen what she was doing, that I knew it came from fear, but that fear, held long enough, becomes the very thing you were trying to prevent. I told her I stayed anyway, because I was never going to leave, not once, not ever, and that maybe that was the one thing she got wrong. Ethan sat in that car for a long time, engine off, key in his hand, just thinking. 15 years. All the rides, all the silence, all the times I showed up without asking for anything in return. He started adding it up, piece by piece, and somewhere in that quiet, something shifted. He went back inside, looked at his mother, and asked her one question. Did he know? She couldn't answer it, not right away, because the truth was, yeah, I did. He didn't call me that night, didn't need to. Some realizations take time, but a few weeks later, my phone rang, his name on the screen. I let it ring once, twice, then I picked up. Silence on both ends for a second. Then he said, "I think I owe you a dinner." I leaned back in my seat, looked out at the road ahead, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled. "Yeah," I said. "I know a place."